All right. So now we are going to officially start the webinar. So welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining. This is the third and final webinar in our spring series. So these webinars have been highlighting how MIT is putting its fast forward climate action plan into practice across campus and beyond. So I'm Susie Jones. I'm a senior project manager with the MIT Office of Sustainability. I will be facilitating today's webinar. And the discussion today is designed to be a cross-disciplinary dialogue exploring a sustainable campus food system here at MIT. So we are going to hear from our colleagues at Campus Dining, Andrew Mankus and Pina Boatwright. This is the Senior Director for Campus Dining and our wonderful registered dietitian. We're also going to hear from MIT Farm, from Alex Benes and Zach Rappaport. They're both Masters of Architecture candidates and co-leads for MIT Farm. And we're going to hear from Justin Brazier, who's an architect and researcher here at the MIT Urban Risk Lab and is doing some wonderful work in the classroom and the community, and he'll talk through that. So before we jump in, some important reminders. This webinar is being recorded so that we can kind of package it up and put it on our YouTube channel so that for folks that weren't able to join in, they can access it afterwards. As we go throughout the webinar, please put your questions into the chat. I mentioned I'm joined by my colleagues, Ellie and Julie and Brian. They're all sort of co-pilots in this operation. Ellie will be able to jump in towards the end and moderate some of the questions that are being answered. So definitely put those questions into the chat as they come up for our panelists. So why are we including a webinar on food in our climate action series? So the reality is that about a third of our global greenhouse gas emissions are linked to our food system. You can take a look on the screen, some of those different food categories and their climate impact. So red meat is generally associated with the highest greenhouse gas emissions. But we know that food isn't just about emissions. So while planetary health is critically important, it's also about the plate. It's about taste. Food is about comfort. It's about economic livelihoods. Food is so important to community resilience. Food is a part of our cultures. Food can help us make friends. Food can help us get out and enjoy the fresh air and so much more. So today our panelists will help explore how we're weaving these threads together in their corner of the campus. But up on the screen, you can kind of see those specific quantitative food goals that we've made part of our MIT Climate Action Plan. If you remember that slide before about sort of the greenhouse gas emissions associated with our food system, we are paying attention to the carbon emissions that are associated with our beef purchases, our overall greenhouse gas emissions associated with our food purchases on campus, and set targets to really reduce those over the coming years with a total sort of 25% reduction by 2030. We're also looking at increasing food recovery channels to make sure we're eliminating edible food waste and able to feed more people. And some really wonderful parts we'll explore with Alex and Zach and Justin is really how we're leveraging the campus as a lab for experiential learning related to food systems. So sustainable ag, climate change, food justice, and creating these pilots each year. Some of the strategies that Pina and Andrew and others will talk about is like how we're really rebalancing our menus to feature more of these plant-forward protein choices, if you remember that chart from before, kind of educational initiatives we're designing, and some of that work we're doing on the infrastructure side as well. So the presentation today is really split up into sort of diving into climate action in the kitchen, climate action on the farm, and in the classroom, and then some time for discussion at the end. So as a reminder, put those questions into the chat as we get started. So I'm going to turn it over to Andrew and Pina from Campus Dining to talk about what they're up to on that side of the campus. And I will be advancing the slides for you guys. So just cue me as you need to. And I will turn it over to Andrew.
All right, great. Thank you very much, Susie. I appreciate it. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andrew Mankus. I'm the Senior Director of Campus Dining for MIT. I bring over 25 years of experience in food and beverage, including more than 15 years specifically in college and university dining, most recently from UMass Amherst. I'm excited to be here. I recently just joined MIT less than a year ago, last June. At MIT, I oversee a dining program that serves approximately 800 meals annually. And really, my focus is in aligning on dining operations with student priorities. And that's kind of what we're going to talk a little bit about today, particularly around access, affordability, sustainability, um, transparency, uh, and evolving kind of food preferences. And then I'll let kind of Pina talk about what Bon Appetit's specifically doing. But um, all while ensuring that we can deliver those goals kind of effectively, efficiently, and at scale. Um, as you can see, just a little bit about campus dining for those that might not know. We have six all-you-care-to-eat dining locations, 12 retail locations. We also provide catering. We have a grocery store at the student center, vending across campus. There's 3,000 students that are on a meal plan. And that results, like I said, 25,000 meals a week and 800,000 meals annually. So, when we're talking about, making change and making change for the positive, you know, if we change behavior here, as you can tell, 800,000 meals, the environmental impact is significant. And that's just across any college and university campus. I mean, we're talking about very, very large scale operation. So our, you know, campus dining's responsibility, not just to serve food, it's really to create this platform where our partner Bon Appetit can deliver a program that's aligned with not only MIT student priorities, faculty, staff, but as well as MIT's sustainability's overarching strategic goals. Um, Susie, why don't we go into some of the next slide? So it's really important to know what our students want, um, because we'll talk about food waste because that's a key driver here. So if we don't know what students want, we're not up to trend. We might as well not be in business here. So and what we're seeing at MIT is not unique, and it reflects really in the national trend. So 60 to 65%. And this plant-based and dietary shifts all come from Data Essentials and NACUF's national trends. So NACUF's is the National Associations of College and University Food Service. There's approximately 500 college and universities that are lumped within this association. And what's really cool about college and university dining is it's a very collaborative approach, right? This is not, your retail. This is not, it's a very collaborative. So we share a lot of information because we're here for students. We want to make sure students succeed. What we're seeing is 60 to 65% of college students report actively trying to eat more plant-based foods. Now, 1 in 4 Gen Z students identify as flexitarians. That's reducing red meat. So that's a good thing. As Susie already said, carbon emissions, we see the highest footprint in red meat. Now, this doesn't mean that students are saying that they're vegetarian. They're just saying that they're reducing red meat. About 10 years ago, we saw a big rise in vegan. Now students are kind of coming to this more flexitarian stage where they like to say, well, I don't want to eliminate it fully, but I do want to reduce it on my plate. And then that kind of shows this plant forward menus have grown kind of 2 to 3 times faster than some of the more traditional menus, where protein was the main focus on the plate. You're seeing more now plant-based protein focused menus plate forward. Um, and then you can see, so some of the red meat and just carbon awareness here is that 73%, and this was a study done by McKinsey in 2022, that Gen Z say that their generation is the most concerned about their environment, the environmental impact of food. Um, and then, Susie showed that chart earlier that reduction is one of beef reductions, the most immediate levers that institutions like us, because we're serving so many meals, um, it can have on food related emissions. We can go to the next slide. So once again, just some national trends in terms of local and sustainability. Um, so students like, obviously they prefer, and this comes down to transparency and knowing where their food is coming from. 70% of students say that they prefer locally sourced food when it's available. And that obviously depends on, it shifts from, college and universities dependent upon, where you are regionally. Northeast actually tends to go up just because of availability of local, produce. But then seasonality kind of changes with that as well. There was a big sourcing issue during COVID. So, we were seeing up to 30% nationally of locally sourced. Um, but unfortunately, when COVID, came, fill rates were having some difficulties, and a lot of vendors had to unfortunately go to broadline distributors to get a lot of their source goods. So now we're about on average about 15 to 25% and back on the incline. Food waste is still a major concern, and kind of one of the largest areas where, you know, and opportunities, I should say, where, kind of sustainability and cost savings are obviously perfectly aligned, right? If we can minimize and reduce food waste, we can put that right back into the system. And on average, college student generates about 142 pounds of food waste annually. There are programs out there and there's tracking systems. There's, obviously technology, it improves every year. There's Lean Path, MetaFoodX, and there's systems in place that can minimize food waste up to 30%. There's reports. And obviously these technologies get better and better. They weigh, they track. They're using AI technologies to see how frequently students utilize certain things, so that our partners like Bon Appetit can see how frequently students are liking certain things so they can minimize how much waste. So like I said, these technologies are getting better and better every day. And then obviously just student expectations are critical. Transparency, where food's coming from, flexibility, just changing menu on the fly, right? If we talked about plant-based and changing menu, and then just accountability, real metrics, not marketing gimmicks, and things like that. So I know I'm short on time, but before I hand it over to Pina, we're really trying to balance three things. We're trying to balance student satisfaction, financial sustainability, and really climate responsibility. And if you do push hard on any one of those, the system breaks. And when you're feeding a lot of students, um, it's very important that you have to be, thoughtful in what you do. So, from that campus dining perspective, our role is really to operationalize at that scale. And we really have to think about it in everyday decisions. That's menu, that's sourcing, that's waste, and not treating anything as this kind of side initiative. It's really thoughtful thinking. So, and then it's really helping build positive habits for MIT students that kind of extend beyond their time here. And I'll just leave you one last study at UMass Amherst. 80% of students said that they would keep their habits beyond their eating habits beyond their graduation. So it's critical that we're kind of training students to eat, training students not to take too much food. And obviously, just teaching them good sustainable practices while they're here. So, Pina, I'll let you share about what are the fun and exciting stuff that Bon Appetit's doing here.
Right, great. Thank you. Hi, everyone. So I'm Pina Boatwright. I'm very excited to be here with you today. So I am a registered dietitian, a wellness manager, and I'm part of the senior leadership team that helps run Bon Appetit here at MIT. Bon Appetit has been on campus for over 20 years, and I'm so excited to work with this company that was very much revolutionized the way that food service is handled. So with the sustainability in mind. Also, for over 20 years, I've been helping adults and teens manage chronic diseases. So I'm very passionate about those healthy habits and sustainable healthy habits. In addition to that, I've been studying food systems. You can see me there in my permaculture class with a great Patrick Whitfield. He was the father of permaculture. And some of you may know him. He was delightful, delightful human. I was so excited to be there. I'm also a lifetime woofer, so I've worked on so many organic farms in New Zealand, Italy, England, and I'm hoping that I can get to Ireland this weekend and do some farming in Ireland. So lifelong woofer. But in addition to all of that, we plan menus on the MIT campus based on the planetary guidelines. So I'm very excited that we can use this framework to help move this plant forward initiative and have a diet that's healthy for the planet and also healthy for our bodies. Susie, the next slide. All right, so when we talk about the planetary diet, we actually have metrics, and in our dashboards, we have proprietary software that helps to gather some metrics around this, and we very much focus on the planetary diet guidelines, and we try to move forward. So the planetary diet guidelines was the Eat Lancet. First report came out in 2019. It's a huge, huge effort made by 16 different countries trying to solve a big global question. How do we feed nearly 10 billion people by 2015? So this was a wonderful effort. And by 2025, the new guidelines came out, and there was 35 different countries and scientists in all different sectors participating in these guidelines. And Susie, next slide. So for our efforts here at Bon Appetit, you can see the breakdown here, which I'm very happy to see the trend over the last 3 years. Our plant-based versus animal products. We purchase definitely more plant-based than animal, and it's been trending in that way for the last 3 years. And we hope that we continue with our efforts and our menus align, and you'll see that big difference on campus as well. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much, Pina and Andrew, for that context. And Pina, you provided such a nice transition to our next team of Alex and Zach to talk about what's going on the farm. And I'm already seeing some intersections, Pina, with what you just mentioned about being a lifelong woofer. I did not know that about you. So let's transition to Alex and Zach to talk more about what they're doing to build this connection from campus to farm and back to campus again. So Alex and Zach, take it away.
Hi, everyone. We're really excited to be here with you. My name is Alex, and
Hi, I'm Zach.
we're both graduate students here at MIT, but we're also both very passionate growers and designers co-leading the MIT Farm Initiative. We're a group of students, faculty, and staff interested, as Susie said, in building this collaboration between local farms and campus. I think what you said at the beginning, Susie, that food is about so much more than just where does it come from and what do we eat. It's about coming together when it comes to growing it, when it comes to cooking it. And I think there's a lot of things that we're excited about when it comes to collaborating with local farms at all of those stages. And so we've been running a series of programs that explore all those separate parts. If we can go to the next slide. One very simple thing we do is we take students to the farms to volunteer. That started this fall, this September. Since the fall, we took over 175 students to local farms, including Eastie Farm, Hanan Farm over in Lincoln, and a rooftop farm on top of Boston Medical Center. It's been just incredibly fun to get to know everyone and grow stuff together and support our local farms. We do it pretty much weekly. We're going right now every weekend because of the season, but normally even up to 3 times a week. And it's just been very nice to meet our fellow students, faculty, and staff while growing together. So yes, inviting everyone, whoever wants to come with us. Pina, we would love to see you there. There's quite a few woofers at the farms as well, so should feel like home. If we can go to the next slide.
Yeah, so one of the programs that we're really excited about and proud of is the Fresh Food Bag Program, which we piloted last fall with Mitos and the Department of Anthropology. And this was a way for us to really push the campus to farm model one step further and really center the experiential. So rather than a traditional farm to table program, it's all about getting students out to the farms, like Alex was saying, and then taking the produce that we ourselves harvest, wash, and package and bringing it back to campus. And then the produce that we sell is subsidized at 50%. So this, contributes to making food a lot more accessible to students on campus. And it's also the food that students pick themselves with their own hands. And so we're really pushing this idea that students can get their hands quite literally in the dirt and enjoy the fruits of their own labor. And so this fresh food bag program, because it was so successful in its first iteration, will continue in various forms throughout the summer and upcoming spring. Susie has been really at the helm of this initiative, and so we're super excited to test out a CSA over the summer and then to build upon the fresh food bags in the fall. And I should mention that this has been so far in collaboration with Hanan Farm, which is the farm that we saw on the previous slide, that's led by Mohammed Hanan, who is both a staff member here at MIT, but also someone who really cares about bringing fresh produce to his community, and particularly immigrant and low-income communities. And so we're very strategic about who we partner with and wanting to ensure that the efforts that we put toward the farm are really building capacity where it matters most. Yeah, next slide.
So the next step is actually gathering about preparing the food together, and that happened in very different forms. The picture on the left is actually at Hanan's farm in one of the greenhouses when it wasn't operating out of a season, and together with Mohammed and local Lincoln community, we took part in this potluck directly on the farm, made a barbecue together, and kind of had it all together to celebrate the end of the harvest season and our collaboration all together. The two pictures on the right is the first one of our Resilient Future Dinners, which is this new initiative that we are running together with Kate Brown and students interested in degrowth over at DESP. And it's just a way to come together, cook, and also just talk about how can we think and envision resilient futures here at MIT and beyond. So this is like a more, let's say, informal initiative that has been very, very fruitful and exciting. If we can go to the next slide.
Yeah, so MIT Farm is both about creating these experiences, but also designing and creating spaces. And we're really hoping to build spaces and have been piloting spaces both on campus and off campus and using that as a way to really center reciprocity. And so this was the MIT Farm Cart that we developed as an initial prototype to bring food to students on campus. And it's also served us with workshops. You can see Alex and I in the middle photo on the right leading a workshop for kids over at an elementary school near Harvard Square. The bottom photo on the right is us leading a seating workshop. And then this is something that we've been able to push around campus. It's currently at East Campus and being sort of taken care of by the students there. The next chance to see this, and I know Joe is on the call, is at the Day of Climate, April 15th showcase. So we're really excited to bring it over to the MIT Museum and continue growing things in experimental ways, both on and off the cart.
And I think this would be a good transition to our last slides, which is workshop and education. So I think we're extremely excited to not only kind of do this initiative on campus, but also allow it in different places and lead workshops and education kind of programs that really empower others to do the same, like activate the spaces for themselves and their community to both grow and gather around food. During IEP, which is an independent activity period here at MIT, we've co-run a class called Root Making, Designing a Root Cellar for Hanan Healthy Foods Farm, during which we help with some design project, both a root cellar but also a farm stand for Mohammed to kind of help with his operation over in Lincoln. As I just mentioned, we are part of the Day of Climate. So on the 15th, we're going to present our curriculum for grades 7 to 12 called Seeding Discovery. And that curriculum is directed at empowering students from grade 7 to 12 to look at their local community and possibilities of allowing growing spaces there, and what would it take to actually design a framework that allows for that. And we've also been running some workshop with the student cohort at the East Farm connected to their local site there. So variety of kind of exercises and activities that share our beliefs in creating those spaces to grow together.
Yeah, so we'd love to have you join us on the farm at our on-campus fresh food bag program. I will say that although MIT Farm officially only came into being this past fall, this is work that's been ongoing for a very long time. Susie's been leading the charge for a while, and folks in Mitos. And there's also been advocates both amongst the student population, staff, and faculty that have really allowed this to take shape and grow. We have almost 400 to 500 people part of this farm community now and on our mailing list. And we're hoping to lead a whole bunch of volunteer sessions throughout not only the spring, but continuing into the summer and then eventually into the fall. So you can join our mailing list at that link, and we hope to see you on the farm.
So great. Thank you, Zach and Alex. And Ellie, maybe you can grab those links and pop those into the chat too. And I definitely highly recommend uh, joining on to one of the volunteer trips, getting out there, maybe when it gets a little bit warmer, I have to say. These guys have been out there in the freezing cold, but certainly in the summer, it's just beautiful. And it really is a way to learn about sustainable agriculture, but also to just be in community with each other. So thank you both so much for sharing. And I think a wonderful thing about, Alex and Zach and Justin, our next presenter, is they're coming from this kind of the architecture side of MIT. I think people who work on food come from a very interdisciplinary background, but at MIT, the hub, I think, of student and faculty and lecturer interest has come from our architecture department. So this intersection of kind of placemaking and community design and food systems. So it's a really special place to tap into here at MIT, and it's been a pleasure working with all of you. And we're going to transition over to Justin to talk more about what we're doing in the classroom here at MIT around sustainable food systems. So I will turn it over to Justin.
Great. Thank you guys. Thank everybody for setting me up. I think going last has been a pleasure to see everybody's work. My name is Justin Brazier. I'm an architect and researcher out of the Urban Risk Lab in MIT architecture in general, where I've taught classes kind of client focused based on thinking about how we can leverage student interest in designing and building and kind of aim them in a direction that's sort of community focused, so they can kind of use their skills to address real world issues and feel like they're contributing to a bigger aspect in the world. And then also what's left off can be kind of continued through work in the community. So when it comes to teaching and research, research related to food security, food sovereignty, and food systems, we try to sort of shed light on the complexities, both social and then often political issues around the folks that are dealing with these issues directly, that may not normally be highlighted. And using our kind of label as MIT, specifically in the architecture and design department, trying to sort of leverage the skills that students are developing and then often are well versed in, and then kind of encouraging them to use those skills in ways to highlight or try to aid or kind of solve for community issues in collaboration with community members. So we're not kind of swooping in, but partnering with folks that are already doing that work, um, so they can respond to these issues, and kind of the community members can kind of take those things and kind of advocate to their local governments or local zoning board to make these changes that they'd like to see in the community specifically. This overview is of Common Good Co-op, which is a BIPOC, woman-led quarter-acre community farm that's in the center of Dorchester in the Four Corners neighborhood. They're operating on, I think, like 5 or 6 city-owned lots. And kind of community ownership is another precarity that we're dealing with in the course itself. But we were Kate Brown. I taught this class a year ago now with Calvin Zong, who was another architecture student with me at the time, my time at MIT, and then Kate Brown, who's a big collaborator with everybody in this room, I think. And now this semester, all adding in Nina Sinecrot, who's a ACT professor, but this farm is run by Coffee Dixon, who's an urban farmer, and approached us kind of thinking about how we can leverage the urban farm to be more like a community farm or a community farm to turn into a community center. So how can we kind of take this space and turn it into a space that people can kind of come into and not think the threshold of growing food is the difference between a public space and a production space. So if you go to the next slide. Um, we taught this course starting last spring, kind of getting students, these are a lot of architecture and planning students, getting them on the ground, talking to coffee directly, being in the neighborhood for a full day of class, getting their hands dirty, just to kind of feel what it feels like to grow in space, and then also learning directly from the people that are doing that work. A lot of the big issues that we deal with at MIT that we're trying to solve for. MIT is a very global institution, but a lot of these issues are really prevalent in our backyards. Dorchester is not too far from the big dome that we're all familiar with. So how can we kind of bridge that gap and humanize these issues that we're all kind of stirring on and have these conferences about sort of on a weekly basis? So this is us on site. And if you go to the next slide. And then it's using the skills of representation that students have, not just design, but kind of taking in information and then kind of remixing it or shedding a new light on it. So these are three different maps of the city of Boston. One looking at environmental justice communities, another one looking at food security and household income and percentage of children that are on SNAP benefits. And then the last one looking at kind of lead contamination in those neighborhoods as related to kind of food growth. So if we kind of take these most isolated sources of information and then overlap them, we can kind of see patterns. And one thing that's not showing on this is maybe redlining or more complex historical issues that could also kind of shed light on why these issues are happening and how we can reframe them into possible solutions in the future. Next slide. A few slides are actually going through a lot of the students' research. Again, trying to kind of highlight the complexities of these issues and why they're happening. So on the left is presentations that students made based on looking at zoning and planning opportunities from the city of Boston. In that semester, we were talking to the zoning board, the BPDA, the Office of Climate Resilience, Grow Boston, having interviews with the folks that are kind of making the rules around how people are growing food in the city of Boston and trying to find loopholes in between those things. The center slide was a student that was looking at the social implications of the Rodney King riots and how that turned into the South Central Community Farm, which was the biggest in the country at the time and kind of fell to its demise over social issues as well. So that connection between civil rights justice and food justice and the complexities of that. And then on the far right, thinking about people that are occupying space, how can they keep the space long term? So community wealth building as well as Black cooperatives that are looking to operate in these spaces that can kind of take hold of the spaces that they can to kind of promote food growth. Next slide. And that course ended off in two things. One was a zine, again, leveraging students' ability to research and kind of create graphics and graphic communication, changing the audience between, within the walls that we kind of use these jargony language and bringing that down to, or bringing it into a different space where we could kind of pass these things out and share information about what we learned, how people can start their own urban farms, and then how can they keep those urban farms, and what are the pathways between just starting a grow bed to actually taking up city-owned lots and turning that space into community space. Next slide. And then finally, their students' vision of common good co-op, turning it from a community farm into a more community center. So adding these kind of extra spaces that came in from meeting spaces to classroom spaces to turning the kitchen that the farm was using on a one-to-one basis, but turning into a community kitchen. So a long-term plan for common good to turning into just a home that was on a plot of land into a community space that people can kind of contribute to in and out. So using this as a basis for a longer term relationship with common good at MIT. On the right, we're highlighting the kind of chicken coop, which came out of the students' design. And if you go to the next slide, this semester, where the chicken coop is kind of the main actor. This is from the students' midterm presentation, where we're dealing with a lot of political issues between having chicken coops in Dorchester. They're kind of expressly forbidden. So their tagline was "Block the System," which I thought was pretty funny. So we're trying to sort of understand the rules that are governing these spaces and then find unique ways to break them without kind of putting community ownership in jeopardy. If you go to the next slide. So we started off with a basis of design, which was a capital coupe based on Nita Sinocrat's design, which was kind of thinking about the chicken coop as an actor or a place of resilience or resistance. So having chickens in a coop or a coup, which was kind of the tagline, and then students kind of remixing this design and thinking about it more community-faced in Dorchester. So how we would change this design to kind of be more forward-facing. And then on the right, we're kind of playing with kind of screen printing and different ways we can illustrate the history of resilience in chicken coops on the face. So doing a lot of research and translating that research into ways to highlight community uses and community forward thinking. This might be the last slide, or there might be one more. Sorry, yeah, this is the last one. So thinking about how we're acting within a bigger ecosystem, students kind of realizing their power as designers or innovative thinking and bringing that in service to community members, common good, and advocating it with decision makers, with the city of Boston, with planners, and how we can kind of break down certain barriers that may not be intentionally there, but once they're defined, they kind of become obstacles that people have to navigate through. So using the skills that students have to either illustrate those findings or redefine those findings and find new pathways to more food security, food sovereignty in neighborhoods that we all should be caring more about. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. So hopefully some of our audience members have come up with some interesting questions. We certainly heard a lot of different ways that everybody on the call is working on food systems issues. So whether it's like purchasing large amounts of food, maintaining campus dining facilities, menu planning, thinking about student health. You know, we have people on our campus who go to dining halls and are on a meal plan and are sort of diners. We have so many students who cook for themselves. We need to think about affordability, access, taste. We have students like Alex and Zach that are, doing this work both, you know, towards their academic advancement, but also probably just for social and community and just kind of extracurricular passions as well. And of course, Justin, who's doing this work in the classroom and has a lot of expertise around food justice and food systems and that intersection with design. So many different pieces to this. And we can sort of take some questions if some have come in from the audience. And I certainly have some questions I can ask as well. And one resource I did just want to point folks to, whether you are a student or no students, there are really great food and financial resources available to students. So we know that food security is an important issue across our campuses in the US. And so MIT has some great resources, whether it's you don't have enough money, you're not aware of the resources, you don't know where to go, you don't have enough time. So definitely tap into these resources or send them along to folks who might need more information about where to access food. So I did want to draw attention to that. And Ellie has put that into the chat. Ellie, have any questions come in from our friends in the audience?
Yeah, so there's one a nice question about food waste and asking about sort of what happens with food waste on campus, both the sort of inedible stuff like that, ultimately would go to sort of composting or other food waste, and then about timely donation of unused food. And so sort of those two pathways and wanting to know a little bit more.
Great. And I do see we have Gunther on the line as well, and he is the Zero Waste Manager at MIT facilities. So I will pass it on to Andrew and Peanut and Gunther if they want to jump in. I'll just chime in that part of the whole food system landscape is kind of the regulatory aspect, the state policy aspect. So food waste is banned from the landfill for big institutions like MIT. So just from a basic compliance issue, MIT does divert its food waste as much as possible to be collected on campus and then sent to an anaerobic digester. So to turn that food into a renewable energy source. Um, that's where a lot of our food waste goes through. It's the same channels that the city of Cambridge uses. And then, of course, there's separate channels for food recovery. But I will let Andrew and Gunther chime in if you have anything to add to food waste, food recovery operations.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. Great question. I just want to remind folks that what we collect on campus, as Susie said, is food waste, which takes a different path than conventional composting. And basically, we go through a middleman. Waste Management's core facility in Charlestown separates, they're a depackaging facility, so they separate the organics from packaging. It could be from recalls or from expired material. And that organics then in a slurry form goes to North Andover, Greater Lawrence Sanitary District, put into a digester, makes methane, and they use that gas to power electric turbines. So we are recycling our food waste in that fashion, which is completely different from composting, whether it's in vessel or out in windrow composting, where there's a finished product, a compost that you can buy as a soil amendment. Certainly, if you have any questions, I'll put my email in the chat, or zero waste at MIT will also.
Thank you, Gunther. Unplanned. So thank you so much for just jumping in and answering that question. And I'll let Andrew talk about some food recovery ideas. As someone who's been at MIT for just over a decade too, we have in the past worked on a nice partnership with Food for Free, which is one of the many great food recovery organizations throughout the greater Boston area. And they come in and they really specialize in capturing institutional surplus food and sort of remaking that food into kits that then get sent out to after school programs, to women's shelters, and so forth. So there's many great organizations that do this food recovery work. And I know it's something we've been sort of munching on internally to think about how to scale that on campus. But I'll let Andrew maybe talk a little bit about the food recovery piece of it.
Yeah, and Food for Free still does pick up and operate on campus. So I just also want to be clear too, this is not just a like recovering food waste is not just an MIT campus problem. This is a problem across college and universities globally. All right. This is not just even within the country. So Bon Appetit operations across campus, across the country, really try to minimize food waste just from the door, right? As it comes in, even before that, right? I mean, Bon Appetit is looking at data. They look at what they call production records, right? I mean, they're looking at what students are eating. They're cooking just in time. I mean, there's systems in place to get to that point to make sure that they are minimizing food waste, right? From the production standpoint. And then it's all about education, about how much you're taking on your plate, right? So, and that starts with first year students, right? Because first year students go into all you care to eats and they go, oh, wow, look at, I can have a whole pizza to myself, right? So you see a lot of food waste, within the first couple of weeks. So, I just wanted to state that. So, we want to minimize it because minimizing food waste, all of that stuff can go right back into the program. All that money can go right back in. So food costs is a number one driver. Food and labor is a two driving cost of goods to operate any kind of food operation, right? So we want to do everything that we can to minimize food waste for operational purposes as well as sustainability purposes. So as it comes to food recovery programs, there are there are programs out there. There's also student-led programs. So any students that are on campus, if you're really passionate about this, I had somebody email me, a student. I thought we were maybe heading in the right direction. There's an organization called Food Recovery Network. if we can get a great base of students out there, I would love to start a food recovery network on campus. Um, and we need students to help support that. I'm happy to help guide you. Um, but there's food safety implications, right, that go along with this. It needs to be recovered safely. And we need to partner with Bon Appetit, obviously, to do that. So they help recover the food safely. So that way, when it gets to its next destination, the folks that we're serving are eating the food safely. So there's definitely methods that we can to recover, and this is why Food for Free is an external organization that does that, because they are trained through third-party providers like ServSafe or something like that. So we can't just recover food and put it out in the infinite like things do, because if God forbid if a student gets sick or somebody gets sick, we can't technically report back as to where that food came from and how somebody got sick from that. So there's definitely guidelines and regulations that we need to follow in order to do that. But we're more than willing to do that because we want to. So
Thanks, Andrew. Ellie, any other questions coming in on
Not
the
yet. I
chat?
think Ina wanted to add something, perhaps.
Oh,
Yes.
sure.
Oh,
Sorry,
yes.
Pina, go
Oh,
for
no,
it.
that's okay. And as the boots on the ground person who helps to manage all the food waste, and we've worked with Gunther so closely and Susie and the team, we are very much trying to change the culture around food waste, even from the production standpoint, like Andrew was talking about. But we go in to the kitchens, we train our cooks, and we have this whole culture and this mentality around food waste, so that we talk about it every week in our house meetings. So it is something that is it's very, very, it's grown and we've come a long way. I feel like we've made some great progress. So, and we're going to continue striving for that. So Bon Appetit is trying to do their part here.
Great. And Ellie, maybe you can drop, if you can find it, the Food Recovery Network is a nice organization just for folks to familiarize themselves. But certainly that call from Andrew around sort of being really open to, you know, whether it's the farm
Can
team or
I add
others.
something real
Oh,
quick? Sorry.
sure, Alfonso, go for it.
So
Alfonso
I think
from
I
Bon
think
Appetit.
we forgot to mention. My name is Alfonso. I'm the general manager for Bon Appetit here in MIT. So we have a tablet. I don't know if you have an opportunity one time. I think Gunter have seen it. If you have an opportunity to walk to the dining room, each of the spaces where there's the waste, there's a tablet. That tablet, what it does is collect some information of the waste that the cooks do. So we're not necessarily tracking what exactly the waste is, but it's an incentive. So when the cooks go and measure and weigh some of the waste that they do, let's say you're trimming onions. So normally they have a small bucket next to it, and they're throwing all these trimmings of onions, peels of fruit, things that are not edible. They put it in this camera and they measure it. And also they do the same. If you go to New Vassar and if you go to the back entrance, there's a bin over there that is, measured every day. So this create a conscious to the cook and the person that are behind the program, or like, oh, every day in these 10 and 10s that Pina was saying, we go and say like, oh, for this week, we did 10 tons of waste. We did this tons of waste. So that, statistically within the company, whenever we have noticed that, only to have that conversation about the food waste, we have dropped it like 30% in the past 2 or 3 years. And it's because it's you cannot really be very intentional about measuring statistically how the waste is, but you can at least create that mentality that you can control the amount of waste that you're doing. So and there's plenty. Unfortunately, we couldn't share all that here for the sake of time, but it's a very robust program. They're using all around the company, and it's very good to see this data how the beef trimmings and all the stuff move around, and how the CO2 and how we take care of the environment. So I just wanted to add that real quick because I think it's a to Andrew's point, it's a really robust program that we're participating, and it's a constant effort to work with the people in the field around the waste. So I just wanted to add that.
Oh, thank you. Absolutely. And you're right that we are short on time, but I think, I can hear my colleagues heads turning too, wheels turning in their brains. But we should certainly do a follow-up webinar or meeting around the waste and recovery and the aspects of that work that are related to the food system. We didn't get a chance to really touch on that today, but it's definitely an important part of our work. So food waste, food recovery, all of that great software that Bon Appetit has created and that they're using via their tablets in the back of the house to track that is really innovative and definitely worth some storytelling around and better understanding of what we're doing and what data we're getting and how to take it to the next level. So thanks for putting that piece of the puzzle into place, and we can certainly do a follow-up on that aspect of the food system as well. We're just about at time, I guess. One sort of fun question I had, maybe for Zach and Alex and Justin, is if we think, I think the farming and food system work is so great for getting us in touch with the with nature and the cycles. So what is going on at the farms right now? What does it look like if you went out to the farm now? What are they doing?
Go ahead. Yeah. Well, so last Sunday at the farm, what we did is actually doing some seedlings in the greenhouse. So preparing preparing the seeds to actually grow first in the greenhouse, especially that it is a colder season right now. And so we're first seeding stuff in the greenhouse and then take them to the land. At the same time, we're doing some more maintenance prep. So preparing some of the sites at the greenhouse, a lot of weeding, to be able to prepare both the field and the surroundings for like a full scale operation over the summer. So I think it is actually like a really kind of fun fact that even though we kind of think of farming and harvesting maybe as only something that happens during the kind of summer and late early fall, the work kind of never stops. So we've been to the farm in full snow as well, helping prepare some of the more operational aspects of the farm. So yeah.
Thanks. And I did just want to jump in. I think I missed a question that was in the chat about how someone who's outside of MIT, so we have someone joining us from the Kenyan coast, can continue learning and applying these insights locally. And if there's resources that they can tap into, whether, if you're not on the MIT campus, how can you learn from what we're doing? So I wonder, Justin and Zach and Alex, if you have insights on whether it's open learning or just the ways in which MIT does a good job of inviting people in to the learning.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we've been trying to do with the courses is always make a sort of document or piece that can kind of live on that tries to highlight everything that we ran into. A lot of it is very hyper local, but I'd like to think that a lot of the kind of facts and figures and strategies that we're trying to uncover can be something that can be applied in different areas. We haven't really got to the point where a lot of the stuff is a little sensitive sometimes. We haven't really got to the point where we've kind of opened it up to a wider group, just because there's a lot of like real world issues that people are dealing with, and uh, some of that intimacy is really important in building trust and things like that with the community. But the aftermath that we're trying to call, and I've learned this from another professor that I took their course beforehand, Juana Sinescu, was kind of making this document that kind of documented the path through things, and then also use those kind of graphic representation of the students to kind of illustrate a lot of the patterns and strategies that we're trying to get to find that can be shared, hopefully globally, so folks can kind of take up the same attitude towards being more active in your local neighborhoods.
Thanks, Justin. And that's really a piece to the ethos of our office. Certainly, we think about these scales of impact, campus, city, globe, using our campus as a test bed. So we want to do that work as much as possible. So please follow up with me or anybody else on the call today to learn more if you are outside of MIT and want to try these out in your own community. But we're just at time, so I am going to say goodbye to everybody and thank our panelists for joining us. It's just the tip of the iceberg on these food systems issues, but we hoped you learned something new and made some connections. And we'll hopefully see you all very soon, maybe out on the farm. So take care, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.